Good morning, evening, afternoon, or night, depending on when you're watching this. My name is Jeff, and this is VR 9 to 5. It's a show where me and some of the coolest people whom I've never met in the real world gather together to talk about something that we've all become really, really passionate about, and that's virtual reality. And it's not virtual reality in the way that you might be thinking of, where we're playing games or we're hanging out with just virtual characters and doing nonsense. This is actually how we come and work every single day. We sit down at our desks and we put on our headsets and we take our normal keyboard and mice, but instead of having the normal monitors that you might be used to, we've got virtual screens and we're working out of places like this. We're working from space or from a virtual conference room or a virtual coffee shop. And so what we wanted to do today in this episode is talk to you really about why. Why do we do this every day? Why do we put on a headset that, frankly, not as comfortable as a real world? Why do we look at screens that maybe aren't perfectly clear? What is it about working in virtual reality that we really like? This is our second episode. So if you've missed our first episode, I encourage you to check it out. The first episode of VR 9 to 5 was all about really what brought us here. Why did some of us, or how did some of us find virtual reality as a place to be productive and work? And that episode is a great chance for you to find out that one of the biggest things that virtual reality actually gives us is not an isolated place where we're all alone, but instead kind of a community where we've gotten to hang out and meet others. So if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to check it out. But this episode is all about what we're calling the good, the bad, and the beta, because we realize that we're all kind of on the cutting edge of something that's it's not perfect, but it's really cool. And it's really good. And it's something that we all like. And so the good is why we're here. The bad is maybe some of the stuff that we have to adjust in our lives. And then the beta, well, you can even see looking around here that some of us, our characters look a little funky. Or, Jeff down here, he's got these little crazy hands. And in fact, Jeff, I wanted to start with you because you have a really unique experience with virtual reality. You're doing something here in VR that is a little bit different, and it's called Focus Verse. And I'm not even going to try to explain this. I would love it if you could just kind of explain what Focus Verse is and really why you think that VR is kind of the right medium for you to be doing this.
No problem. Hey, Jeff. Hi, everybody. Sorry about my spider hands, but you can tell that this is the beta part. So the good, the bad, and the beta. Here you have beta. So Focusverse is, it's simply a way for a group of us to come together and concentrate on getting our work done. The way that we do it is using the Pomodoro method, which means we put 25 minutes on a timer. We set intentions as to what we're going to get accomplished, and we keep each other accountable. 25 minutes, 5-minute break. We do it 4 times. Ideally, you do it 4 times, and we also do it live on LinkedIn. We really just up the accountability, making sure that if we're sitting together and working together, we're going to get as much done as possible. And so Immersed has been actually the perfect place for that because we all have our extremely comfortable setup with our screens. However, I also work to bridge the VR world with the non-VR world by offering it on Zoom. And so we do that once every 2 weeks. I'm hoping to get started a bit more often, but once every 2 weeks for now. And it's been amazing. I've gotten really great feedback. I don't think I've talked to anybody who said that they didn't get a lot out of it. So yeah, it's been going on for probably, I think, 6 sessions or so. We do it on Fridays.
Who in here has been to Jeff's thing? I know I've been there. Emmy, you've done it. I know I've seen you in there. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Almost
I've done
everybody.
it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what do you think it is about VR that helps with this? Man, I know that this is the kind of thing that some companies do like in person, I think.
Yeah.
Is this just a virtual thing? Is this something that people do in person? What's different about doing it in VR?
Look, for me, it's basically working for years on trying to become more mature with task orientation, getting things done, like literally different methodologies, like one of them is called getting things done. And so I guess throughout my life, I've gone through a whole bunch of different like help books for productivity and just focus and things like that. And Pomodoro is one that I found that I really, really liked. I tried it out. It's a Italian guy named Francesco Cirillo. He's a professor, and he just came up with this method. So it's nothing that I made up. Um, but after doing a bunch of studies of different time increments, he determined that this 25, 5, 4 times doing that is really the best. So yeah, it just I've been for a long time trying to work on improving my focus, and I figured, you know what, I've got great friends here in VR, and I want to get better at this. Why don't we do it together and amplify it out to the world so that we can show that we're trying to do the best we can to keep focused.
That's great. In fact, it's funny. The first focus verse I joined. So I'm an engineer. I do a lot of labbing for the organization that I work for, and I'm also probably the most ADD person you're ever going to find. Anybody watching this is going to see me looking around and fiddling, and you'll see. You may see looking here. I've got these virtual like looking screens, kind of grayed out screens. These are real screens that I'm working on. So I'm constantly distracted. But I sat in on a focus verse, and I had this one thing I've been trying to get done in my lab for probably weeks, and it was just one of those things I know I needed to sit down. I needed to set up some routing between some devices, and it was one of those I just know if I could just focus in on it, I could get it done, but I didn't. But I attended one of your focus verses, and I was able to knock out what I thought would have taken me probably an hour's worth of work in, I think, maybe 25, 30 minutes because of kind of the accountability. There was a weird feeling of like I felt like I oddly owed it to you to get it done.
Right.
And another person in here who has been working to a timeline or a deadline, and Emmy, you've attended some of Jeff's focus verse things. I mean, you're an author. Tell us about what the focus verse has done, but also really why you come into virtual reality to do something that doesn't seem like it has anything to do with VR.
Well, first of all, with the focus verse, um, I have to tell you, most writers have heard of what are called writer sprints or writing sprints. And typically, those are a little bit longer sessions, and I do use those. And since uh, it's just really important for me to be able to focus on stuff because, well, writers can be easily distractible. What I've used the focus verse sessions for is editing. And one of the editing techniques that I use is red, yellow, green. So you go through your entire manuscript and you start at the last scene. You read that last scene and you figure out what needs to be fixed, is there a continuity error, what is it, and you read it all the way forward. Okay. And with focus group, it was like, okay, I've got one scene or maybe two short scenes, and what's missing, what's broken, and bada bang, bada boom, bada bang, bada boom, bada bang, bada boom. And I was able to get through a 70,000 word manuscript doing that in just a couple of days.
That's amazing.
Right? And I found it to be very helpful. And like you said, Jeff, it's the accountability. It's the I need to lean in. I'm not going to be getting up from my desk except for those short 5 minutes, right? And it's the same but very different from the writing sprints. And so I think that most writers, if you're, well, there's plotters and there's pantsers. Plotters, we need an outline, we need to know exactly what we're doing. Pantsers, just give me something in, what it is that I'm working on, and I'll just keep writing until I'm done. Both of them like writing sprints, but I think the focus verse really brings us into something that is very structured and will help you with editing.
Good. What brought you into? I know we talked about, I think, in the last episode a little bit about how you ended up in VR, but how much of that book would you say that you actually have written from within the headset?
It was more than half. And in
All right.
fact, as you guys know, and for the audience, they may not realize, but this space station, we call it the lounge, the space lounge, has 2 levels. And this is the upper deck, and then there's a lower deck. And when I would get frustrated in my writing and, sometimes you hit a wall, I could just sit back and watch the globe spin and just help myself relax into it and then start writing again. And so that plus the fact that I've got a community behind me. In fact, today I had just heard from my team about the name of my book. The working title was Consequences. And I've got a team of people working on my blurb and on my cover and everything. And they're just like, "Mm, I'm sorry, Emmy, that is just not going to work for dystopian future." And I'm like, okay, fine, let's do some brainstorming. And we came up with 2 top contenders. And I was able to reach out to the community, have almost an instant focus group, talk through all 3 names. And, frankly, we came up with it.
Yeah,
And I have to
that's
tell
I've
you,
loved that
it
about
was,
this community is just that the ability to go in like you're in a real office and kind of bounce ideas off each other.
Mhm.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I want to say
That's great. Go ahead.
it's an interesting thing about all of us here, and I don't think we're oddballs in VR headsets in this aspect, and that's that we're all social people that probably really miss the office, in some way, or well, we used to miss the office until we realized how much better this is, right? And then
Yeah.
now when we hear that some of our coworkers have to go into the office for a day, we're like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry to hear that.
It's true.
You'll get through it.
true.
We're there for them support wise. It's like just like Emmy was saying, how we supported her in her selection of the title, right? As someone in an office environment could have done that too. If somebody grabbing a coffee with or standing by the water cooler with, that's what we have here. In some ways, these people that I see every day are the people I'm closest with. I see them more than my family on some days, right? And it's really, really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And someone who's watching who might not be aware, like when we're talking about meeting with our community, it's not just in VR, we're on the Discord. And that's where like it's a great way to engage if you can't be in the headset and you want to see what your friends are doing. And I can't wait for Emmy's book to come out because I'm
Yeah.
going to buy a copy and read it. I love dystopian literature.
Yeah,
We're all
well,
invested in the
and
book
actually,
now.
Yeah,
I'm glad you
we
meant
belong
you're
to.
speaking up here, Heather, because you have a unique story you've really kind of become a bit of a VR evangelist. Um, your career is where you're doing coaching with people.
Right.
And you were mentioning before we got started here that you really see virtual reality as a way to actually bring that together. I'd love to hear more about that from you.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I'm really excited about it. I've always been a bit of a nerd. Um, Anything futuristic. I loved Star Trek as a kid, and so I'm always curious about what the future holds and being on the cutting edge of technology and whatnot. So it started out with my son wanting a VR headset to play games. And it ended up with me spending way more time in the headset than he did. And as I've been building my business, so with my coaching, I coach neurodiverse leaders basically to work with themselves and use their creativity, focus it back at their productivity. And because like you're so brilliant, come up with so many ideas, but why am I always stressed out? Or why can't I overcome this? Or why am I not making more money? That kind of thing. It's like, well, you're a very creative person. Let's turn that around and look at your situation with your brain and outsourcing the accountability, as someone was talking about earlier. Like, I have to do well for my coach or for Jeff. Um, so, yeah, so I was like, it would be really cool to do coaching in VR. And I started looking through the apps in the VR, in the Meta Store or whatever it is. And, there was Horizon, this and that. I'm like, And this one was really highly rated. Immersed was really highly rated. And I'm like, and it's free? Okay. So I hopped in and my world has never been the same. I've made so many friends, and we kind of spontaneously made a Friday after hours party that people show up to where we can unwind, and there's a lot of potential. So I'm learning very quickly, and I'm enjoying the quirks. Like, I enjoy the social aspect, but I also enjoy the quirks and being playful with my friends here and finding the edges of what works and how to get rid of spider hands and
Floating
the fact that
characters.
you can churn as someone freezes on you, you can churn your head around and turn it back and they'll unfreeze. We find all these little things. It's like, it wouldn't be as fun if there weren't the beta aspects.
Yeah, and now, one of the things is it's really easy for us who are, I think all of us here are a little bit evangelists for VR because we really like it, but it's not perfect. There are some like changes that we have to make to the way that we work. What things have you done that have been really like? What are some quirky things that you had to change because you're wearing a headset instead of being in the real world? I would love to. I mean, I'm putting that out to the group, but Heather, I'd love to hear from you because I also know you have a new toy coming that's going to change too. In
Yes.
fact, I think you said it just arrived.
Yes.
I'd love to hear you talk
My
about that and then
Pro.
really hear about those quirks. Oh, yes.
Okay. Well, first I wanted to mention that in front of me right now is my coffee. And to drink it before, I'd have to lean way back. But now I have this handy high-tech thing, and it's called a straw. Perhaps you heard
Drinking
of
your
it. I
coffee
think
from a
we
straw.
outlawed them, but we're bringing back the straw, so I can just drink like this.
Yep.
Tasty coffee. Yeah, but I got my Pro.
I
What's the
I
official
will
name? The
say
Quest
I
Pro.
will say real quick before you talk about your Pro, if you want to have a beer in a long neck bottle, no
Yep.
straw required. Just saying.
Oh, yes. That's Friday nights.
I was going to say the
There you
adult
go.
beverage is a long neck bottle. No more
Yep.
Yeah.
cans. The coffee is a
Sorry.
straw.
Okay, but you have an
Yeah,
exciting
you can
delivery
drink your
today.
wine straight from the bottle. Yeah, so I can never remember what these are called. Oculus 2, Quest 2, whatever. I have the headset where when I go to mixed reality where I can see all of you guys, but I can also see grayscale my background in my home. I'm saying for the people who don't know what we're talking about. It's grayscale, but with the new Pro headset, it'll be in color, as I understand it. Don't know because it's sitting in a box right here. I can't wait.
Wow.
So,
That is
and
some
then
restraint.
facial expressions. Some, like, I can see Jeff go to markets, facial expressions, smile for us. Yeah. Okay,
There
I'm
you
doing the
go.
same expression. I'm doing the same expression. Can you see it?
No one
If
can
you-
see it.
No,
Too much
because I don't
Botox.
have face.
Really good. You can even do eyebrow shifts.
Oh my, I
That's right.
can't
Yeah.
wait.
You
So
can
the new
wink.
headset will make me have less Botox side effects.
Well, yeah, it is funny because you do the coffee trick, and I do the same thing with my coffee. I find I drink my coffee out of now it's a reusable plastic straw, but I mean
Yes,
same thing, hot coffee out of a straw. In
out of
fact,
a straw.
I even I found that I was in the real world the other day, and I ordered my coffee, and I asked the woman for a straw when I picked up my coffee, and I was like, well, guess I'm just used to it now. So even in the real world, I know I'm drinking my coffee from a straw. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that I've found I've needed to change from. I have I have a cord because the headset doesn't have great battery life. You'll see that with the Quest 2. It's about 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hours. So I have a cord literally coming out of my ceiling that my wife, she comes in and she sees that I've literally screwed an electrical cord to the ceiling because that was a change that I needed to make. But Dave, you actually did an entire video on YouTube about how to become more ergonomical in VR. And I'd love, you've got a bunch of little tricks. In fact, you've got some tricks that, I mean, a lot of us in here have adopted
Oh, yeah.
because you've been doing this for a long time. So I'd love to hear some of the stuff you've changed. You can talk about the good too, but I'd love to hear more of some of the stuff that you've found challenging about working in VR, because you've really found good ways to work around it.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. So, like we for this episode, we're talking about the good, the bad, and the beta. And we've been talking a lot about the good. And Jeff's spider hands was the beta, which I understand his hands aren't spidery anymore, which is exciting. So,
Congratulations.
but I wanted to
See,
talk
that's what I
about the
love about this is
yeah.
I figured it out. After being here
Oh,
enough,
Oh,
I
you did?
figured it out. You just change your
I think it's
avatar from one type to the next. So here in Immerse, you've got several types of avatars. If I go from my
Ah.
meta to my Ready Player Me, we'll have to report this back to the Immerse team because it's going to be extremely helpful. There you go. So my hands are
And
good
there
now,
you.
I
That's
suppose.
fantastic.
Or maybe Tim, who's recording, is not seeing it the same way, and people aren't going to understand anything. But that's more the beta. I don't know.
But there are these kinds of things. There is definitely a bad that goes along with the good. Now we're all here because I think we universally think the good outweighs the bad, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. But VR right now is in its infancy. So Paul Tomlinson is one of the heroes for all of us. He was one of the first people to work in VR full time for years. I think he's been doing it now for like 4 years, um, which is incredible because the technology is in its infancy. He did a kind of a famous article. Now you can see it by going to a browser and typing "working from" dot space, and that'll show you the article. Well, in that article, he talks about the early days of the personal computer in the 1980s, where the state of the art was a giant clunky beige box that had this loud annoying squeal of the modem handshake and everything else. And so there's a lot of people that wanted nothing to do with that, but early adopters and people that were excited about the technology and saw the potential of the technology jumped on board and were all about it, right? Well, that's where we are. And again, I credit this thought to Paul as he says that VR right now is in the, sort of 1980s beige noise machine state, right? Like, so this technology, you get spidery hands, you get weird avatars freeze and whatever, because it's brand new technology that's evolving crazy fast. So a lot of times when you start a different experience, like you get a Apple Watch or an iPhone or some new piece of technology, we are trained and used to this smooth as silk onboarding. Everything works, it's all beautiful. That is not VR today. Right now you should expect friction. There is friction. You have to be prepared to be frustrated by certain things when you start in VR. Now, the important thing is, so if you have the right mindset and you say, I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to put in the time to grease those wheels to lessen that friction, you will fairly quickly get to a state where you can have that smooth as silk, quick, easy, seamless experience in VR. But the only reason you have that experience is because you know all the little quirks, right? So just, truth be told, there are quirks, there are funny things that happen. So I would encourage anybody out there who's watching this, who's intrigued by this and wants to try VR technology, just expect there to be a little bit of a learning curve, and you have to be okay with that. If you're not okay with that, just don't even try. So I would encourage you, just be ready for the bumps in the road. Now the other thing is the immersed software. So immersed is an app that runs on VR, right? It's not synonymous with VR, it's an app. And the team that is building, the company that does immersed, and the team at immersed who is building this technology works ridiculously hard. I mean, these people, we've gotten to know them, a lot of them, through the Discord, through just being social in VR environments. These people put in crazy hours and they work super hard. And they work so hard and they push new features out at lightning fast paces, right? At a lightning fast pace. Well, when you're working that hard and you're moving that fast and you're pushing code over and over and over again, new features, new, you're gonna when you're at that level, you just expect there's going to be bugs. There's going to be tweaks. So you have to have the right mindset, and that is to just be understanding and forgiving of that. And when you log in, like right now, there's a situation where pass through portals, which is where you can create a little window where you see the real world through that window. Sometimes those little windows move, right? Well, guess what? A, that's not that big of a deal. B, the Immerse team will probably have that fixed in a week. Like so, but you can't get bent out of shape when you see a bug like that crop up, because the bugs crop up fast and they fix them fast. So it's just something to be aware of, that when you try this software, it moves fast, and then and that's exciting because like they're rolling out like the features of this little sort of gray, ghostly screens you can see in front of me right now. That's You can see that because I can see my screens. If I hide my screens, that goes away. So you can see that right now
Suggested
I'm
by
not
user Tristan
viewing my
Armstrong. Let's
screens.
give credit where it's due. Tristan Armstrong suggested that feature, and Immerse
Oh.
listened up and implemented it.
There you
It's
go.
true.
There you go.
Cool.
It's true.
So the my point in bringing that up is those features are coming super fast and it's very exciting. So you just have to like ride the bumps, and then you're riding fast because it's moving fast. So the next thing I want to talk about real quick is like when you're just starting in VR and you have the right mindset now, you're ready for it, ease into it. Don't like put on your headset for the very first time and do an 8-hour day. It just there's problems with that. You need to wean yourself into it. So just start little by little, and then you'll find yourself acclimating to it fairly quickly. You don't If you do too much too soon, you can get headaches or whatever. But once you're familiar with it and you slide into it and you work up to it, you can be like a lot of us who work in VR all day, every day. It doesn't happen overnight. Um, the hardware itself, some more of the bad that's not Immersed's fault is the hardware itself is again, it's a burgeoning technology. You're not going to get 4K resolution in the headsets. You're just not. So like if you have to have that 4K resolution, VR is just not for you, and that's okay. The technology is going to get there eventually, and when it does, maybe then you can join the VR sort of revolution. But the resolution in VR is 100% absolutely good enough to be able to comfortably work and see text on screens. We will all attest to that. But no, it's not 4K. So like you have to be okay with those sort of you have some sacrifices like resolution. Also, another area of friction is when you get in and you start using Immersed. You have to learn how the menu systems work. How do you resize screens? How do you change seats? And so, like, all of that takes a little bit of time. But then you have to give yourself time to do that and to learn how everything works, and then it'll make it a lot faster for you. And then physically, I think you had mentioned this when you asked me the question about an hour ago before I started babbling. Um, Physically, in the real world, you have to make some accommodation for the headset. You now have sort of a semi-heavy Kleenex box dangling off the front of your head. The form factors are going to get smaller and lighter, and it'll get better. But right now, in real life, the headsets are kind of heavy, and so you can do things to distribute the weight and carry the load off, on the top of your head so it doesn't push on the bridge of your nose. And, different headsets, they have different comfort modifications you can make. And then things like your facial interface, where the headset actually touches your face, is important to get that right so you don't get hot or sweaty. Or some headsets, you can have it that don't touch your face at all. Headset power, the batteries can run out, so you can stay plugged in or wired. You need to be able to sit and stand. That we do things like several of us do things like chair mounted keyboards and keyboard trays, so you can spin around and see lots of different screens. Exactly. So I do have video. I have a YouTube channel that shows a lot of these ergonomic suggestions. You can go to youtube.com/at work in VR. That goes to my channel, and I have a video on ergonomics where I show my setup that kind of copes with some of these areas of friction, right? Well, so I'm talking about all this bad stuff and all this friction. Why put yourself through that is the question, right? Well, the answer is it's amazing. Once you, I mean, it is absolutely unreal to work in here. I can have up to 5 screens. They can be as large as IMAX movie theater screens. You know, they're super easy to resize. You have these social interactions. You can have work in multiple fantastical environments. You can get extreme focus where you don't have any visual or audio distractions. I mean, the list goes on and on. So the benefits are worth it. But when you start working in VR, expect to put in the effort to really figure it out. So I hope that makes sense.
You know, I think you said it the right way in that you sometimes have to put in the work to get. I mean, think about it like
To get the
anything
benefit.
new
Yeah.
out there. Anything new out there that you want to reap the benefits of, you've got to put in a little bit of work. You've got to try something, and especially when you're on that cutting edge. And I think that this is very much cutting edge. And you said it already, but there are some new headsets that are coming out there that are, you know, they look like they're going to be a lot lighter, a lot smaller. Apple is supposedly working on some new headset that's going to be, you know, better and whatever. Who knows? But I feel like the future is really promising. But you got to kind of be somebody who likes dealing, or who's willing to tinker, willing to play, willing to try new things, and it's not going to bother them. So,
Yep.
And that's really good. What's interesting to me is that this isn't just a nerd technology, though. We tend to kind of think of people who are cutting edge as just being nerds, but I mean, I think you and I, Dave, maybe the only uh, official nerds in here. We've got
Yep.
we've got everything from Haney. You're an entrepreneur. You're someone who has is your own startup. And now maybe I don't know. Maybe it is very nerd technology, but so I would assume being a startup, you're somebody who's probably willing to be on the cutting edge. What brought you into VR? Why? What has this done really for you and your business and the way that you work as an entrepreneur? And what adjustments have you had to make because of it?
Yeah, actually, I'm an early adapter. Like I'm a technology early adapter. I love technology and using it as a tool to enhance my productivity and solving a real world problem. So, of course, we all love remote work. I'm a big believer of remote working. So when actually this technology come up, like 3 years ago, I started to get a headset like Quest One. I start using it and try it. Then I figure out it's not yet for everyone. Then when Quest 2 come up and the update of workrooms, basically, I got a headset for all my core team, and we transferred the work into full remote, and we like use it every day in workroom, and the presence and the interaction that nothing matched that. So we saved a lot of transportation and commuting every day to work. We shrinked our office into a smaller one and actually a most luxury one. So we have a small space and in a better place. So then we started to work in this environment and get the best out of it. Like we're using a design, 3D designing for our hardware, and that actually a game changing in the designing system. Also the collaboration. So that actually make a lot of sense, saving a lot of time and giving us a focus. Like our brain in the VR is like 4x, like 5x. So we get rid of all the distraction of the real life or real world distraction. Then it start paid off. Actually, we have been in then we made the switch to immersive. Then we started with Workroom, like the native Workroom apps. Then we want more of this collaboration. So that when we switched it to immersive like 5 months ago. So basically, we're full-time remote work in this environment, and it paid off in our productivity. Like it validated when we did the work in 3 months or 3 years in the real life. So also we started to invite like our customers and our partners to join us in this environment, and they got impressed, and they got like a sense of we are in ahead of technology. So we got credibility and trust for our customers and partners. Then actually the tools and the social aspect of this environment, especially, and this community, like Jeff organizing the Pomodoro and help us focus on getting things done, that actually is like priceless. So we believe now VR is choice, but not very soon from now it will be for everyone. So with every headset released, a new headset, a new people, a newcomer come, so you'll find it comfortable. I mean, when Quest Pro get and release the Quest Pro, that actually when like most of our network joined when Quest Pro come. So I really enjoyed this environment, and I can see the potential of this technology going there. The only problem is actually we have a resistance of the rest of our team and network to join. So now I'm trying to actually like work with the people already in the VR. So rather than like doing a lot of effort to convince everyone to join, I mean, now I think we should like work together so that like save 50% of the way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we tend to think of technology like this as especially expensive, but I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and I said, he was like, I can't imagine spending $1,000 on a headset. And I'm sitting there at his house, and I looked, I'm like, you have 3 monitors. I bet they cost you more than $1,000 for all 3 of these wide monitors that you have. As you mentioned, you were able to downsize an office. It's interesting to think about when you're willing to try something a little bit different. The cost part of it isn't. It's really not the barrier if you're able to understand what it can do for you. So for you mentioned it can bring your teams together. You can make you guys more productive, able to help you downsize in an office. Um, James, we haven't really talked to you yet, but you're the CIO of an organization of a civil engineering company. You're an engineer, so to some degree you're a nerd, but you're not a nerd in the technical sense, but also you're CIO. Like Andy, you're someone who runs a business. How are you seeing VR as a potential way for you and maybe even your employees to work? And is this something that you could see businesses justifying the cost of? And what do you think has to
very
change
much
in the
so.
industry to make it worth it?
Yeah. And, in full disclosure, I actually am a closet nerd because I spent 30 years as an IT director and before I moved into this type of role. So
You've been
I'm
holding
a
out on
geek.
us.
But that said, like this week, we're rolling out some VR headsets for some of our surveying team that do high definition 3D LiDAR scans of railways and railway tunnels and bridges and things like that. And so as of this week, the teams will start reviewing some of those scans in 3D or in VR, being able to start looking at the wireframes that get generated from that and being able to start manipulating it. So doing some of the same work that Haney's team's doing, just on a larger scale. And so I see it as a game changer. And the cool thing is, I got into it not looking at it as a technology for the company. I was looking at it because I suddenly, after 30 years of working in busy, fast-paced offices, beginning to deal with people face to face, and both the good and the bad of that, and then suddenly I spent 2 years at home working remotely, and suddenly found that I was missing people. Well, that's now turned into developing friendships, developing new co-working skills, being able to finally be able to master Pomodoros that I had been trying for years and just failed at. But now suddenly, with the accountability of people all the way around the world, I'm succeeding at that, and it's been fantastic. Well, now that VR has become such a important part of my life, suddenly I'm starting to see its application in our offices, in our teams. And so we'll be using it to bridge the gap between some of our offices on different parts of California. And so people can get together, do the collaboration together in the same space, yet be 600 miles apart. So I'm really looking forward to it as a game changer.
So,
Oh, and
Haney,
by
you
the
said
way,
you
to-
have some people. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to add, I wanted to thank Dave for, as I was working to iron out some of the friction with getting used to working with a headset. He's only cost me about $250 because of his video.
Yeah, that's true.
But that said, I can now wear my headset for 8 hours a day, and I love it. And I can rotate in my bow chair, and I'm all set. So anyway,
No,
I didn't.
no,
No, go
it's
ahead, back to
true.
Haney. That's fine.
No. I mean, well, it was along the same topic. Because Haney, you said some of your staff is already in here. This is something you are you. So you have other team members that come in and work in the headset also. Sounds like from what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, and actually they love it. Like not all the team actually accept this in new change. Like, but the most core team, like 5 of our core team, like the designers and the developers, the engineering part, of course, find it useful and productive. Also, part of our marketing and sales team, when they actually invite customers to join like a meeting, they find it very, very, very useful. Yeah.
That is an interesting thing that we haven't really touched on, which is that, you know, we talked a lot about us meeting together here in virtual reality, but we haven't really talked about that you can actually interact with people as your avatar. You can interact with people. I mean, Horizon Workrooms gives you the ability to bring other people in. And I know, Miguel, you're someone who we haven't even talked to yet, but I know, attend a lot of your meetings as your avatar. If you could just kind of give everybody a quick idea of who you are, what you do, and then talk a little bit about how people who are not necessarily in virtual reality have reacted to you coming to them as an avatar, as opposed to your very handsome face in the real world, which we've seen also.
No, yeah. So thank you for inviting me. So my name is Miguel. I'm a recruiter by trade. I recruit for software engineers. And the way I see this technology is being able to bridge the gap of having employees to have to travel for work or get together with their teammates. I've been a champion on this technology where I show up on a lot of meetings with my avatar. As a matter of fact, my Calendly link that I use for people to use to book appointments with me has an option for people to choose if they want to meet me in VR here or if they want me to show up as an avatar in our first call. And I've had a couple of takers there that have chosen that option to have our first interaction here in VR. To Dave's point, we're talking about the good, the bad, the ugly. There's been some times where I meet somebody here for the first time and there is some technical issues. They can't get their avatar going or they didn't set up their avatar. So, there's still early technology. But I do feel that because I'm able to talk about it often, it's a good conversation starter. When I show up as an avatar and they don't know, they're like, oh my goodness, like, how are you doing that? The question that I get the most is like, how are you doing it and how can I get it? and
Right.
and that's
Yeah.
and that's the expression that I get most of the time. And I also think about it because I'm in human resources of the inclusion aspect of it. A lot of teams travel to get together for offsites, but there are some individuals that perhaps have some disabilities, and those disabilities can vary from physical disabilities to mental disabilities. And the ability to make a safe space for people that travel is a chore. This could be a great medium where like they still feel inclusive because they're talking to their teammates here and they're sharing the same space and they don't have to worry about like traveling and whatnot. And the other thing is, I think the avatar gives you this sense of like, for people that perhaps are shy, or maybe have some anxiety that are around other people, like this avatar gives you maybe like a real sense, like not seeing the real me, they're seeing the avatar, and that perhaps feel more comfortable, getting up there and talking to everyone instead of physically in the real world, getting out there and having the anxiety that now everybody's staring at you. So I think it gives you that perceptive that you're able to be yourself without the anxiety.
Yeah, and that's a really
Nice.
interesting point, Miguel, because one of the regulars, the guy that Jeff mentioned earlier, he is one of the most outgoing people that I know because I met him in here and interact with him here in VR. Well, it turns out he's got a lot of social anxiety and he really is a totally different person in the real world, and we didn't know that, and he shared that with us and we were all very
Hmm.
surprised, and because he's so outgoing, but he shared with us that in real life he's the quiet guy in the corner and doesn't say anything, and you know and in here he's the class clown, and it's just really it's really interesting how VR has sort of allowed him to escape that anxiety and sort of become more of an outgoing person in this medium. So very
Yeah,
interesting.
no, I totally agree. And I think, the biggest differential from being here in VR than having a Zoom meeting or Google Meet is that it feels to the brain that you're sharing the same space. I have to turn around to look at you. I have to turn around to look at everyone here. And when somebody talks, you see everyone's avatar turn around at you. Um, yeah, and when you're having a Google Meet or a Zoom call, there is this feeling of a barrier of the screen that you can't go beyond the screen. You can't have that interactions. Where here it feels like, hey, I can see your screens are down, my screens are down, and we're fully engaged having a conversation.
Totally. Yeah.
That is an interesting. That is an interesting topic or idea that perhaps as much as this is kind of a new technology, but it does kind of give us that idea of being with each other. There's a benefit to people who maybe they aren't as comfortable in the real world. I guess it's funny because I was in that conversation, Dave or Miguel or Dave. I don't remember which one of you said that. When he said that, and I remember going, "What? You're not a social butterfly out in the real world too?" Um,
Right.
and that's why I when I started this whole thing, I started with some of the coolest people that I've never met face to face. I have had such a great experience in here, and I am someone who's naturally outgoing. I am someone who tends to uh, be happy to be at the front of the room, but I found that in here I'm so intrigued by the stories of everybody I meet, and so it's interesting to think that there are people that in here that this gives them a chance to blossom where maybe out in the real world they wouldn't. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Actually, I have seen that a lot. Like a lot of our team was social shy. When we
Mhm.
join this environment, they become a totally different person. Like social shy in the real world, here they actually have to express about themselves and socialize with all the people. I got surprised. But yeah, I just confirm what the Miguel said, that actually people change in this behavior. Like people behavior changes in this environment, like new environment and a new character and new behavior. Also, people like Miguel, when I joined Immersive for the first time, he supported me a lot and teach me how to use the Immersive. Actually, what the dev in the YouTube channel about how to set up your desk and make it comfortable in the keyboard and chair. Jeff in Pomodoro session and how to stay focused. So actually, these guys make the experience much more smooth and support all the newcomer here. So I give it to all the people here. Thank you very much.
You're
Awesome.
part of that mercenary group now, honey. So
That's right. That's
Mm.
right.
You guys gave me a great idea, though. Since I work with neurodiverse professionals, um, there are a lot of people who have social anxiety or maybe are a little autistic, and removing a source of stimuli such as being in your physical body around people. And I know from being autistic that that can feel like you can physically feel it and it feels sticky, or, so removing the variables of the inputs, I just thought, like, it's more than a place to meet, it's a place to have a new experience of oneself. So thank you. That's what happens in here. We start talking, we get ideas and change the
I
world.
see a whole episode. I see a full episode where we talk
Yep.
about neurodiversity. This is like a
Yes,
great opportunity for a
please.
future
I
episode.
see a
Write it
book
down.
in about a year and a half or 2 years, a
Emmy?
book on this.
you
Maybe a
go.
couple
Well, if
research
Emmy writes it,
studies.
it'll be quicker.
I like to add there that recently we had a person that showed up in one of the rooms. It was a new individual, and he shared in the public room. He had some questions. We helped him out, and he shared in the public room that he always had anxiety, and coming into an environment that professional that welcome him. He even said, I have to go to a private room because I have to have a moment because this was such an amazing experience.
I understand that. I can feel that.
I believe it.
Yeah. That's great.
I'm starting to think just about this topic again now that we've all spoken on it, and at least to this group, and this is what I think we're all yearning to try to communicate in one way or the other. The good, the bad, and the beta. Now that's not the ugly at all. I think that the beta is what we're so passionate about. We're so interested in the fact that we get this headset on and all of a sudden we realize, whoa, wait, where's everybody? Why are we more alone than we thought? At least that was my experience. I thought that I was going to be like a latecomer to this whole thing. Yet we're here not just watching it, but actively being a part of it. And I think that we're all loving that so much. Being here in this app and in all the other things that we do in VR. And so one day this is going to arrive at the understanding of our spouses and our kids, and they're gonna get it, right? And our friends that may or may not understand what the heck we're doing in a headset all day.
They think I'm part of a cult, Jeff.
Exactly. Nobody gets it. And I think that's what it's really cool to have met this group in here that's all aligned on that. And you guys are my people when it comes to being on that cutting edge and helping to shape what it's going to be. So anyway, that's from the inside what I have to say about why I'm so interested and passionate about this whole entire medium. And I just thought this is an incredible topic. So thank you.
Yes.
Agreed.
Very enjoyable conversation. I love hearing more about. I've talked to a lot of you in I was going to say in the real world. I mean in the real VR world, and it's nice to.
It's the
kinda
real
get
world.
It is the real world. That other world. I don't know what it is.
Well,
not
we've
here,
all
though.
come to redefine that.
Yeah, but it's great to hear more, targeted answers to who people are and get to know what people are working on. So I've
Absolutely.
appreciated this time.
It was funny. I was out of VR for about a week one time, and then
Oh,
I
I'm so
came
sorry.
back, and
So
I can't.
sorry.
That's okay. I know, right? I was out. It was horrible. I was out for
Must
a
have
week.
been
Well, I
horrible.
came back. It was awful. No, I came back and I was working back here in Immersed again, and Chris McDonald, one of the guys that's in here with us all the time, he was like, "Welcome back to the real world," and I just really appreciated the irony of that. And he's so true.
Yes.
It's so true. Like, you come back in here and you're like, okay, yeah, all right, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's so
Dave,
funny.
we were
The
worried
real
about
world.
you. We were worried.
Humorous
I
dude.
think
Even though we look at
we should-
animated versions of ourselves all day, I think we all understand these little feelings of what when you're stressed
That's
out
right.
at work, you got to get into Immersed. You've got to
Yeah.
you've got to have your setup.
real.
Like that's the only thing that kind of takes off the edge.
Anchoring.
It's amazing.
It's
It's
true.
anger management.
Yeah.
Well, and
How I say I was just going to add that how it's funny how the VR life bleeds into our real life. Today I was talking to you, Jeff, that I was talking to my wife, and then unconsciously, I just looked at my hand expecting to see a menu. But I'm like, okay.
Well, I hope you weren't going for the do not disturb button.
Exactly. How do I report my wife? Report.
report.
There are some feature requests in
That's
for silent
By the other
spouse
hand.
button, but it doesn't. Haven't seen it come up yet.
That's funny.
Oh my goodness.
Well, guys, we're
Classic.
running short on time, and Heather has a new headset to open. So we can't
Oh
keep
my
going
gosh.
with her, or
Can you
she's
let
going,
me go
she's going to go
Congratulations.
crazy.
Right.
Yeah. Hey,
but-
come to my party tonight. After
That's
I
right.
see
Heather's got her
Heather.
after hours.
That's right.
party.
Friday
It's
after hours.
You'll see people
9
dancing who don't
Central.
normally dance.
Absolutely.
Yes, you will.
There you
On
go.
tables. On tables.
And you'll see
to
Heather's
50s
facial
music.
expressions.
Oh,
There you
you'll
go.
get to
Right.
see my
Oh.
expressions, and you'll see that is not a good thing because I have many expressions. It's gonna be fun.
Well, Jeff, I think you made a
BYOB.
great point. BYOB, perfect. Jeff, I
Bring
think you
your
made a
own
great
straw.
point. Bring your own straw. We started this, and initially we were going to call this episode "The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly," but you said it perfectly, which is what a lot of us have figured out in here is it's not so much the ugly. There isn't really an ugly to it. There's a good, there's a maybe bad, and then there's that beta. There's that part that we all want to learn from. But those of us that have been doing this for a while now, and those of us that are new, we think we've got something here, and we really hope that anyone watching this is going to join us because we feel like we've broken through past the old boring work from home or the old boring office where you've just got monitors in front of you, and we think that we've gone beyond those monitors, and we're into something new here. And what we really hope is that this show is going to encourage more of you to join us, and we will absolutely welcome you with open arms here in VR. And to all of my friends whom I've never met, thank you guys so much for being a part of this, and we look forward to seeing you soon in VR. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yay.
We got 2 minutes and 33 seconds to spare.
And
That was good.
So music.
And no, Dave, and scene.
Yeah.
there you go. There you go. See.